coach tied to the mafia, a star player betting on his own games, and the FBI says this is just the beginning. So who's next?
As we've touched on early this morning from the NBA involving not one but two arrests of notable people within the NBA. Shams is with us. We've been following your Twitter feed all morning long, Shams, as you've been reporting on it. For those who've not heard anything about this, just tell everyone everything they need to know. What has happened this morning?
Greeny, Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups and Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier.
But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today. Former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this...
Picture this. It's a normal Tuesday morning. The sun hasn't even fully risen yet. And then, chaos. At exactly 6 a.m., FBI agents knock on two doors, hundreds of miles apart. One in Portland, Oregon, one in Orlando, Florida. And just like that, the NBA's world exploded. Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups, yes, the five-time All-Star, the Finals MVP, the guy who's been coaching in the league, arrested, taken into custody at his home. At the exact same time, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, the veteran who just played a game the night before in Orlando, also arrested. Two separate investigations, two simultaneous raids, one massive nightmare for the NBA. And here's the thing, nobody saw this coming. Not the teams, not the league office, not even Adam Silver himself. As one reporter put it, as of last night, I was told the NBA did not have knowledge of these specific arrests. The FBI had been working in complete silence, building their case for months, maybe years. And when they were ready, they moved fast and they moved hard.
Investigation that's been ongoing as of about 15-20 minutes ago. I was told Malik Beasley was not taken into custody today as part of these gambling investigations and arrests today.
Okay, so again, we've had two arrests so far and the possibility there will be more. It's outstanding work, Shams. As always, we'll let you get back to the phones here, and if there's any further information, please join us as we'll bring it out to the table here right off the bat. We live in an entirely different atmosphere when it comes to sports gambling than certainly those of us, Shefty and I, and some of the older...
The FBI director, in fact, said, Leslie, that this is the insider trading saga for the NBA. Sports gambling investigation that they announced today, 6 defendants named, including Miami Heat's Terry Rozier and former Cavaliers player and assistant coach Damon Jones. They say between 2022 and 2024, illegal betting was happening, that these guys were involved in throwing the games or misusing insider information for gambling, and then profiting on games for the Hornets, the Lakers, the Trailblazers, and the Toronto Raptors. They gave specifics about Terry Rozier, who was playing for the Hornets at the time. He said he let a bunch of people know he would leave a game on March 23rd, 2023. Those people then wagered $200,000 on Rozier's under statistics. He left the game after 9 minutes. Prosecutors say those bettors profited tens of thousands of dollars, then went to Rozier's house to share the proceeds and count out the money. Prosecutors indicated this investigation was linked to the bust of Raptors player Jontay Porter, who, remember, he got banned from playing for the NBA for life and was convicted on felony charges. The second big investigation, Operation Royal Flush, involving Trailblazers coach Chauncey Billups, player Terry Rozier again, and Damon Jones in an underground illegal poker ring. This involved several organized crime families associated with La Cosa Nostra. Basically, prosecutors allege the celebrity athletes were used to lure unsuspecting gamblers to these poker games.
But what were these guys accused of? That's where the story gets even darker. According to ABC News, Chauncey Billups is allegedly tied to an illegal poker operation. And not just any operation. We're talking organized crime, the mafia. Let that sink in for a second. A sitting NBA head coach, someone responsible for leading a team, making game-time decisions, managing players, allegedly involved with mob-connected gambling rings. And Terry Rozier? He's accused of being involved in sports gambling and prop bets. Not just casual betting. We're talking about prop bets. The kind where a player can control the outcome. The kind where you can decide whether you score over or under a certain number of points. The kind that can be manipulated. The FBI's Eastern District of New York has been leading this investigation. And get this, FBI Director Kash Patel himself has been increasingly involved in recent weeks. When the head of the FBI gets personally involved, you know this isn't small-time stuff. This is national news. This is federal crime territory. A press conference was scheduled. More arrests were expected. And the reporter dropped this bombshell. There are expected to be numerous arrests also tied to both of these situations. Numerous arrests. This wasn't just about two guys making bad decisions. This was a web, a network, and the FBI was about to pull the whole thing apart thread by thread.
My name is Joseph Nocella. I am the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. I'd like to welcome you here today. In addition, we have with us today FBI Director Kash Patel, FBI Assistant Director in Charge Christopher Rea of the New York Field Office, Special Agent in Charge of the New York Field Office, Leslie Bakshi's, New York Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security, Ricky Patel, Newark Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security, Michael McCarty, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny, and the Executive Director of the Waterfront Commission.
So you have to imagine it would be really tough to get away with this if you tried it. But there's more of the list, more of the highlights from Joe Pompliano on this list. So there are two separate indictments. The first involves 6 defendants accused of participating in a sports corruption scheme that exploited insider information involving NBA players and teams. So that's a big one. The defendants leveraged their connections to place prop bets based on confidential insider information, winning tens of thousands of dollars per bet. Now that's the Porter thing, right? Where he was trying to manipulate the prop bets, where you say you can get less rebounds, less points, or whatever.
Let's break down what we know so far, because the details here are absolutely insane. Chauncey Billups, again, a head coach, allegedly involved in an illegal poker operation tied to organized crime. Think about what that means. This isn't just a guy playing cards with his buddies on a Friday night. This is underground gambling. This is the kind of operation the FBI spends months infiltrating. The kind that involves wiretaps, surveillance, undercover agents. The kind tied to the mafia. How does a respected NBA coach even get involved in something like that? Was it money? Was it connections from his playing days? Was he in over his head and couldn't get out? We don't have all the answers yet, but the fact that the FBI felt confident enough to arrest him tells you they have evidence, hard evidence. Now let's talk about Terry Rozier. The FBI had been investigating him for at least 2 years. 2 years. That means while he was suiting up for the Charlotte Hornets, while he was getting traded to the Miami Heat, while he was playing in front of thousands of fans every night, federal agents were watching him, tracking his bets, following the money. Rozier's case revolves around prop bets. And if you don't know what prop bets are, let me explain how dangerous they can be. A prop bet isn't about who wins or loses the game. It's about individual stats.
Did a player score over 20 points? Did he grab more than 5 rebounds? Did he hit more than 3 three-pointers? Here's the problem. If you're the player, you control those outcomes. You can intentionally miss shots. You can fake an injury and sit out the fourth quarter. You can hit all your unders, and nobody would even notice except the people who bet on it. And that's exactly how these things spiral out of control. One analyst explained it perfectly. A player can get involved with a bookie. He's betting on other things, betting on football games or whatever the case may be. All of a sudden, he owes him a little bit of money. All of a sudden, a conversation takes place. I wish I could get rid of some of this debt that I have to you. The next thing you know, simple as that, a player feigns an ankle injury, he hits all of his unders, and that's the end of the conversation. That's how easy it is. That's how fast it happens. And once you're in, you can't get out. But here's where it gets even messier. The NBA had actually been investigating Terry Rozier too. And according to reports, Rozier was cleared by the NBA investigators over the last couple of years. That's why he was still playing. That's why he was still on the court. The league looked into it and said, we don't have enough to punish him. But the FBI? They had different standards. They had different evidence. And they clearly saw something the NBA didn't. And then there's Malik Beasley. He's a free agent right now, and he's also under investigation. But unlike Rozier, Beasley has not been cleared by the NBA. That's why he's not on a roster. That's why no team will touch him. And as of the morning of the arrests, Beasley was not taken into custody. But that doesn't mean he's safe. It just means his time might be coming later. The reporter made it clear. There are expected to be numerous arrests also tied to both of these situations. So the question becomes, who else? How many more players? How many more coaches? How many more team staff members, agents, trainers? How deep does this rabbit hole go?
Yeah, I think number one, what you do in the darkness will always come to the light. And these players and Chauncey, at least allegedly, have been doing things, that they certainly thought would be remain secretive. I think the second thing is, it's hard, like back then when we were playing in the league, it was relatively easy or significantly easy for us to stay away from it because it wasn't as easily accessible. So yes, we always had people coming in and explaining to us what you could and could not do. And it was mainly don't do anything. And it was almost like you didn't think about it twice because it was such an impossible thing to even entertain doing. Now I think because it's so easily accessible and there's so many different ways to do it, it's a much easier slippery slope to get yourself into. You can dip your toe in the water, and all of a sudden it's a snowball and it goes downhill real quick. And so I think that's one of the challenges to...
Here's the thing. This scandal didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a world where sports betting is everywhere. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, sports gambling was illegal in most of the country. It was taboo. It was something you whispered about, something shady characters did in back rooms. Networks like ESPN wouldn't touch it. The league stayed as far away from it as possible. Players were told in no uncertain terms that gambling was worse than drugs. It could end your career instantly. But now? Now you can't watch a game without seeing betting odds flash across the screen. You can't listen to a halftime show without hearing about over-unders and point spreads. There are entire shows dedicated to gambling. Sportsbooks are sponsoring teams. Betting apps are on everyone's phones. One former NFL player put it perfectly. Back then, when we were playing in the league, it was relatively easy or significantly easy for us to stay away from it because it wasn't as easily accessible. Now I think because it's so easily accessible, there's so many different ways to do it, it's a much easier slippery slope to get yourself into. You can dip your toe in the water and all of a sudden it's a snowball and it goes downhill real quick. That's the reality of modern professional sports. Gambling is legal now. It's normalized. It's part of the culture. And for most fans, that's totally fine. They're not involved in the game. They're not controlling outcomes. They're just adding a little extra excitement to their viewing experience. But when you're a player, when you're a coach, when you're someone who can actually influence what happens on the court,
that line becomes incredibly dangerous. And the more accessible gambling becomes, the easier it is to accidentally or intentionally cross that line. Another former player added, "I've been places around things where it was actually easily accessible. But you were taught in football, at least when we played, that, this is worse than drugs. If you're an athlete in a place and it's like you can't be at places where they gamble, people may approach you about these things, and here's what you need to say, because these are the things that will come of it, the implications, the consequences to it." Think about that. Worse than drugs. That's how seriously leagues took gambling back in the day, because they understood something fundamental. If fans can't trust that the game is real, the entire industry collapses. And that's exactly what's at stake here. We've seen glimpses of this in the NFL. In 2022, wide receiver Calvin Ridley was suspended for an entire year for gambling. Not for throwing games, not for point shaving, just for placing bets. Jamison Williams got 6 games, other players got similar punishments. The league made it clear, we will not tolerate this. But today feels different. Because we're not just talking about a player placing bets on his phone. We're talking about a head coach arrested by the FBI. We're talking about organized crime. We're talking about a network of people potentially manipulating games for profit. As one analyst said, when you see a head coach of a professional sports team get arrested, you stop and ask yourself, we have not seen anything like that through the history of sports, very rarely. That is something that makes you stop and say, wow. Wow.
As I said, it does take courageous prosecutors, but it takes a courageous United States attorney to bring this case, because we are going to take heat for it. But we don't shy away in this administration. We don't say no. What we do is we bring the results across the finish line. We bring them to the public. We bring you accountability. And yes, they will have their day in court, and you will hear the evidence through the court system exclusively. We will not deny anyone of due process. And that's the brilliance of this system. That's the brilliance of this administration. Everyone will be held to account. So with that, I turn it over to United States Attorney Nosell. Thank you.
So what happens now? What does this mean for the NBA? For the players involved? For the fans who've been watching these games? Maybe even betting on them? Let's start with Chauncey Billups. If these allegations are true, his coaching career is over. Done. You don't come back from being tied to mob-connected illegal gambling. Even if he somehow avoids serious jail time, no team will ever hire him again. His reputation, built over decades as a player and coach, is destroyed in an instant. And Terry Rozier, same story. Even if he fights these charges, even if he somehow gets acquitted, his NBA career is likely finished. Teams won't take the risk. Fans won't trust him. Every shot he misses, every game he underperforms, people will wonder, was that real or was that on purpose? But the bigger issue here is the NBA's credibility. Because at the end of the day, as one analyst put it, if these sports leagues, professional sports, and even collegiate sports, they don't have the credibility of their product, they don't have anything. Think about that. The NBA is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It relies on fans believing that what they're watching is real, that the players are trying their hardest, that the outcomes are legitimate, that the competition is genuine. If fans start to doubt that, if they start thinking, wait, is this player throwing the game because he bet on the under? The entire foundation crumbles. And this isn't just speculation. We've seen it happen before. The Arizona State point-shaving scandal from years ago showed exactly how this works. A player gets involved with a bookie. He bets on other games. He owes a little money. Then comes the conversation. Hey, you want to get rid of that debt that you have to me? Just fake an ankle injury next game. Hit your unders. We'll call it even. And just like that, the integrity of the game is compromised. One commentator explained, these prop bets, they are incredibly simple. A player can get involved with a bookie. This is what happened in the case of Arizona State. He's betting on other things, betting on football games or whatever the case may be.
All of a sudden, he owes him a little bit of money. All of a sudden, a conversation takes place. I wish I could get rid of some of this debt that I have to you. The next thing you know, simple as that, a player feigns an ankle injury, hits all of his unders, and that's the end of the conversation. That's how fast it happens. That's how simple it is. And that's exactly why the FBI takes this so seriously. Now, the question everyone's asking, who else is involved? Because remember, the FBI said numerous arrests are expected, plural, not just Chauncey and Rozier. More people, more names, potentially more coaches, more players, more staff members. And then there's Malik Beasley, who's still under investigation by the NBA. He hasn't been cleared, he hasn't been arrested yet, but the fact that he's been a free agent and no team will sign him tells you everything you need to know. Teams have been warned. They know something is coming. So how big is this really? Is it just a handful of guys who made bad decisions? Or is this a systemic problem, a network of people who've been manipulating games for years? We don't know yet, but the FBI is about to tell us. And when that press conference happens, when those additional arrests are made, we're going to find out just how deep this $500 million conspiracy really goes. Let's talk about the one rule that every professional athlete knows from day one. If you can change the outcome of the game, you absolutely cannot bet on it. Period. No exceptions. No gray area. This isn't complicated. It's the most fundamental rule in professional sports, and it's drilled into players from the moment they enter the league. One former NFL player said it perfectly. In football, at least when we played, this is worse than drugs. If you're an athlete and you can't be at places where they gamble, people may approach you about these things. And here's what you need to say, because these are the things that will come of it, the implications, the consequences to it. Worse than drugs. That's not an exaggeration. That's how seriously leagues take this. Because drugs are a personal problem. Gambling, when you're an insider, affects the integrity of the entire sport. Another player added, "We always had people coming in and explaining to us what you could and could not do. And it was almost like you didn't think about it twice because it was such an impossible thing to even entertain doing." Back then, it was easy to stay away from gambling because it was illegal, it was inaccessible, it was taboo. But now it's on every commercial, it's on every app. It's part of the culture, and that makes the temptation so much stronger. But the rule hasn't changed. The line is still there, and when you cross it, there are consequences. Take the Tennessee Titans example. A player was suspended for 4 games, not for betting on NFL games, but for betting on college games. And you know what his mistake was? He placed the bet while he was at the team facility. That's it. He wasn't betting on his own team. He wasn't trying to manipulate outcomes. He just happened to be on team property when he placed the bet. 4 games. Gone. Just like that. Why? Because the NFL has a zero tolerance policy. If you're in the building, if you're part of the organization, you can't be involved in gambling in any way. The risk is too high. The potential for corruption is too great. And that's just for a player betting on college games from the wrong location. Imagine what the punishment is going to be for a coach allegedly tied to mob-connected poker rings. Imagine what Terry Rozier is facing for allegedly betting on NBA games he was playing in. This isn't a slap on the wrist. This isn't a fine or a suspension. This is federal crime territory. This is jail time. This is the end of careers, the end of reputations, the end of everything these guys have worked for. One commentator summed it up. What you do in the darkness will always come to the light. And these players, and Chauncey, at least allegedly, have been doing things that they certainly thought would remain secretive. But nothing stays secret forever. The FBI was watching. The FBI was waiting. And when they had enough evidence, they moved.
So where do we go from here? First, there's a press conference scheduled. FBI Director Kash Patel himself is expected deleted. When the head of the FBI personally steps up to address the media, you know this is bigger than we even realize. This isn't just about basketball. This is about organized crime. This is about corruption at the highest levels of professional sports. And more arrests are coming. The reporter made that clear. There are expected to be numerous arrests also tied to both of these situations. Who are they? Other players? Other coaches? Referees? Team staff? Bookies? We don't know yet, but we're about to find out. Second, what about the NBA's own investigation? Because here's the crazy part. The league had been investigating Terry Rozier for years, and they cleared him. They said, we don't have enough evidence to suspend him or punish him. So he kept playing. He kept getting paid. He kept being treated like a normal player. But the FBI saw something different. They had different tools. They had wiretaps. They had financial records. They had evidence the NBA didn't have access to. And they clearly saw enough to make an arrest. So what does that say about the league's investigative process? Were they not digging deep enough? Were they too eager to protect their product? Or did the FBI just have resources and authority that the NBA doesn't? These are questions Adam Silver and the league office are going to have to answer. Because if fans start thinking the NBA knew something was going on and chose to look the other way, that's almost as bad as the gambling itself. Third, what about Malik Beasley? He's still out there. He's still under investigation. He hasn't been cleared by the NBA, which is why he's a free agent and no team will touch him. But he also wasn't arrested in this first wave. Does that mean he's safe, or does it mean his arrest is coming in the next round? And fourth, and maybe most importantly, how many games were affected by this? If Terry Rozier was betting on NBA games, was he manipulating his own performance? Were there games where he intentionally underperformed so he could hit his unders? Were there games where Chauncey Billups made coaching decisions based on his gambling debts instead of what was best for the team? We don't know. And that's what makes this so scary. Because if even one game was compromised, if even one outcome was manipulated, then fans have every right to question everything they've watched. One analyst said it best. If these sports leagues don't have the credibility of their product, they don't have anything. The NBA is worth billions of dollars, but all of that value is built on trust. Trust that the games are real, trust that the players are competing fairly, trust that the outcomes are legitimate. And right now, that trust is hanging by a thread. The FBI investigation is ongoing. The press conference is coming, more arrests are expected, and the entire basketball world is holding its breath, waiting to see just how deep this $500 million conspiracy really goes. Because if there's one thing we've learned from this scandal, it's this. What you do in the darkness will always come to the light. And when the FBI comes knocking at 6 a.m., there's nowhere left to hide. So here's the question I want to leave you with. When the people controlling the game are the ones betting on it, is anything real anymore? Can you ever watch another NBA game without wondering if what you're seeing is legitimate competition or just someone cashing in on a prop bet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the NBA can recover from this? Or is this just the beginning of something much bigger? And if you want to stay updated on this story as more arrests happen and more names come out, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this scandal is far from over.